And it's 8 o'clock. It's time to get going. Welcome everyone. It is 8 o'clock Perth time in the evening. I have no idea what time it is your time, but thank you very much for joining this office hours session. Sing out as always in the chat line or anything else if you can't hear me or see me. I have a phone next to me which is logged on as a guest, so hopefully everything you can see and hear, I can make sure it's working all correctly and validly. I'm pretty pumped up. Obviously, I've just got back from Open World. It's been a pretty exciting week. There was no office hours last month for DBAs because I was touring Latin America, but we'll have a chat about that. Already we got something. 2 p.m. Amsterdam time. Welcome to our friends in Netherlands. Always nice to have people in Europe, and hopefully this is a nice little sojourn after your lunch break into some tech. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen so we can have a look at the slides we're going to talk about today. Hopefully you can all see the slides and still see my face in a small corner of the screen. So as I always start every month, getting in touch with me is very easy. What I've done is I've come up with this very simple website. It's called Linktree, and rather than plunder you with blog address, email address, Twitter address, Facebook, etc., you can just have one link, linktree.connor, and that will have a simple page which you can link to all the other ways you can get in touch with me. Love talking technology. I threw this up obviously at Open World as well, this slide, and a whole stack of people have reached out to me on Twitter and the like, in particular, Twitter and Facebook. So a big thank you to people who just like being involved in the community and talking technology. For those that may be new to office hours, given that I spruiked it a bit at Open World, I've put this do not adjust your set picture up there. What you'll find is all the slide content generally is going to be toward the bottom left of screen. That's mainly such that when we record this, and thankfully I remembered to record it, we can actually put it on the YouTube video sessions with me in the top right. So there's actually a face behind the voice and the content at the bottom left. So no need to sing out that something looks a bit weird. Normally I start with a thing called bits and pieces, just various things about the DBA community, and then we go into tech content. I'll start with the same thing as well, but the tech content will be slightly different tonight. But let's cover off some bits and pieces first. Why was there no office hours last August? It was because we were very busy traveling on the Latin America tour. Through a whole stack of cities. I joined for about 2/3 of them. This is a photo from inside one of the little tour buses we had. You can see Jennifer Nicholson there. She's the community manager. So if you're interested in becoming an Oracle ACE director, Java champion, groundbreaker ambassador, etc., reach out to Jennifer on Twitter, and she can hook you up with all the information about how to get even more involved in the community. But we have a few members there you can see on screen from Latin America. And just to whet your appetite, some of the things we did, we went to a volcano that was in Costa Rica, I think, or Guatemala, one of the two. So I think it was in Costa Rica, so we went to a volcano. We went to another place in Guatemala called Antigua, which is this beautiful views over the thing. We went to the pyramids in Mexico, which was just blown away. We had a day trip there. And we also went to Panama, which I'd never been to Panama, and my vision of what it would be like was nothing compared to what it was. Beautiful city right on the coast. Just before you think, oh, so you went on this tour just so you could go sightseeing. No, at each city we had some fantastic events ranging from sort of 80 to 100 people in some cities up to over 500, I think, in Mexico. So great to see a lot of activity in the community. And I mentioned this in the last office hours I had. One of the things that's been really impressive is both in the Indian tours I've done earlier this year and in the Latin America tours, most of the venues have actually grown in terms of their numbers of participants. So it's nice to see a thriving community that's actually growing out there in the Oracle sphere. So that's what's coming up. What's coming up? If you're in the APAC area, Australia, obviously where I live, but India, Asia, etc., we've got another tour coming up, and you can see there on the screen a whole stack of cities throughout Australia, New Zealand, China, Korea, Japan, etc. With the APAC tour, once again, a whole bunch of speakers from all over the world, hopefully with plenty of good credentials, coming to see tours throughout APAC. So if you're in these regions, please get along to those tours. The vast majority of them are either free or very low cost, and you get a full day of great content. After that, in December, I'll be going to UK OUG. So if you're joining this Alpha Hour session in Europe, check out the UK OUG website. They've got a festival in the first week of December down in Brighton. Probably one of the nicest places to be in England, especially as it gets cold. So right on the coastline, and normally it's in Birmingham. So it's great to have a change of venue. Not there's anything wrong with Birmingham. And straight after that, if you're in India, don't forget the premier Indian Oracle conference, the Sangam conference this year in Hyderabad. You can see the countdown there from the website. That'll be literally the 2 days after UKOG. So a lot of the speakers at UKOG will simply cycle back through India, and we'll do the Hyderabad conference there. You'd be looking at 1,000+ people there with upwards of 6 or 7 tracks of just exceptional database content. So keep an eye out for all those events in the bits and pieces. Normally at this stage in our office hour sessions, we would be talking about what questions have come in from the community to be addressed in this particular session. And there's 3 there. There's career advice, Oracle not available, and flashback logs. But full disclosure, I wanted to be honest with everyone. We did get some questions, and we're not going to talk about them. I will promise to get to them next month or as soon as I can. But I thought the reality is it's a week after Open World. That's what everyone wants to talk about. And obviously that's where all the big announcements are made. That's where we had literally the biggest concentration of tech content in the Oracle community for the year. And it would be remiss of me on a DBA office hours to not talk about all the bits and pieces that came out at Open World. Now, a lot of people think, Open World is just some, fantastic thing that we get to go and have a great time. And I will be honest, I love going to Open World because I managed to pick up my annual supply of Deathwish coffee, my annual supply of my favorite gin. But before you think it's all too good, I also get my annual supply of expense receipts that I have to fill in so my manager doesn't give me a hard time. So it's a bit of fun, a lot of red tape, but also in particular, a fantastic way of bringing the community together. So I want to talk about all the good things that came out of Open World. The first thing you may have seen, which was launched at Open World, but really is probably not part and parcel of Open World, is our new theme. And you may have seen if you go to support.oracle.com or www.oracle.com, or if you've downloaded any of the presentations from Open World, in fact, almost any Oracle branded site, you will have seen that sort of what I used to refer to as the corporate 80s look, the beautiful Oracle red and the generally sort of generic gray background is gone. Now we've got effectively a new theme, a new set of colors. And I'm by no means a UI expert, by no means a design expert, but I actually quite like it. I was quite enamored with it. It made the slide content at Open World much more interesting to look at. And so if you are interested in design, etc., then you can go to design.oracle.com. The next thing I'm going to put up here is the safe harbor statement. Now that's a bit weird. Why would I put a safe harbor statement up on an office hours? That's because we had all these announcements at Oracle Open World, which are obviously about also the future of Oracle, future products coming out. So I have to put the safe harbor up just in case some of these things come out in a different guise to what I talk about today. But hopefully that also whets your appetite and tells you that maybe there's going to be some interesting and futuristic looks at stuff we're going to talk about today. So let's start with VMware. Now, you might be thinking VMware is not an Oracle topic, but let's face realities. A lot of people run VMware in their organizations. They run a lot of services, especially file and print, but in these worlds nowadays where servers are just so gobsmackingly powerful, the reality is you can buy one server and it can do so many things. Like a standard 2-socket server nowadays can do probably all your organization's filing and printing and Active Directory and so many other things. And so it makes sense to carve those incredibly powerful pieces of kit up into logical resources. And a lot of people use VMware for that. Other people use Oracle VM as well. There's a number of people out there, but VMware is probably the one that's dominant. The problem that we've had as DBAs with VMware in the past is it's been a pretty lonely place. If you wanted to run Oracle on VMware, then you'd sort of be given a lot of friction in the Oracle community, because we obviously have our own VM product, Oracle VM, which lets us build the database technology very, very tightly with the logic inside the VM. And so it's generally still what we think is the best way to do it. But as a result, we're left a little bit out in the cold. And in particular, one of the things that used to really get people worked up was the fact that our support arrangement with VMware was, yes, you can run Oracle on VMware. You're fully entitled to do that. But if you have any kind of problem, then the chances of getting support might be somewhat limited. Our official position was we didn't guarantee support, or we would guarantee support as long as you could potentially reproduce a problem not running the Oracle database on VMware as well. Now, that's the official position. The reality is, before I joined Oracle, I was a DBA and I worked at places that had Oracle on VMware, and I regularly logged SRs and were very open with the support people saying, yeah, we're running VMware and Oracle, and I generally still got support. So it's one of those things where it was simply more of a mechanism, I believe. Obviously, I don't speak officially for Oracle in this sense, but I believe it was more just a case of making sure we were covering the bases in case we had some cataclysmic problem due to the combination of VMware and Oracle. But a new beginning. This was announced concurrently on the VMware site, the Oracle site, and by Larry Ellison at OpenWorld. We now have a much better relationship in terms of the support levels. So now if you're running Oracle on VMware, as a lot of people already are, or if you're running Oracle and you wanted to run it on VMware but were balking at it because you were worried about the level of support, we now have made this relationship a much better one, in the sense that you can now run Oracle on VMware and get the same kind of support arrangements as if you were running Oracle on bare metal on VM. This is the key one, the document that you want to be bookmarking if you're a VMware customer and you're using Oracle. And that is document ID 249212.1. It's always been that document, but we've actually amended the text. You can actually see Oracle customers with an active support contract supported version of Oracle products will receive assistance from Oracle when running these products on VMware environments. That's the key sentence that has really changed. You now have that support. One of the cool things with that, of course, is that if you're currently running Oracle on VMware in your own data center and you're looking at moving to the cloud, and this is office hours for Oracle, we would prefer it if you move to the Oracle cloud, but if you're running to any cloud and you currently want to run VMware, then you can now do that, which means you could do what I've put there, like a lift and shift. You could take your VMware image running on premise and throw it up onto Oracle Cloud and run it VMware on there on any of our infrastructure offerings, and still get that same level of support, but obviously be able to devolve some of that responsibility such that you don't have to worry about stuff in your own data center. So the fact that we now support VMware is pretty cool because you have this ability to lift and shift. One thing I want to stress is we have not changed our licensing rules with VMware and Oracle. Now, I know that's often a bit of a cause of contention and a cause of some debate and argument. As I always say in these talks, I don't have any official position in terms of licensing. I don't walk in those circles. That's way above my pay grade. But my understanding is if you look at that note, there is no change to the way we do licensing in terms of Oracle on VMware, which is typically a little bit different to Oracle on Oracle VM. So I want to stress it's an improvement and a change to the way we support products on VMware in terms of licensing. Nothing has changed. And as always, speak to your local licensing representative to get the exact conditions and requirements relevant to your customer site. It's way above my pay grade. Upgrades. Most people, I would imagine on the call, are on a combination of 10, 11, and version 12. And I say that fairly flippantly, that most people are on 10, 11, and 12. I think the stark reality is not many people are running Oracle 10 anymore. A reasonable chunk of people are running Oracle 12, and the vast majority of people, especially those people who run their databases with some caution in terms of upgrade frequency, are all running on 11.204. And that's great. 11.204 is a fantastic release. I used it for a long time at the various customers I worked on before joining Oracle. It's pretty much rock solid. Obviously, we would prefer people to upgrade and stay current, but the reality is we know that a lot of people are on 11.204. So let's talk about some announcements that came out of Open World, and also to clarify a few things in terms of where you need to go, because there is a time bomb ticking, because 11.2.0 support is coming to an end. In fact, it may have even finished by the time this comes out onto YouTube. So here is a graph that maybe you've already seen, hopefully you've seen many, many times, but if not, we're going to cover it again. You can see 11.2.04, we've extended and extended and extended and extended. You can even pay to extend it even longer into 2020, as you can see there. 12.1.02 has a similar form of extended support to go a little bit further. But here's the thing that tends to confuse people. 12.2.01 and 18C, which obviously come out later than 11.2 and 12.1, have fairly short periods of support. And that is because our driving release for long-term support is 19C. And you can see there from the graph that 19C will be supported many, many years into the future. Now, every time I put this slide up, people don't look at the bars. They just look at the numbers and go, my goodness, 11, 12, 12.2, 18, 19, etc. And everyone freaks out. It's like, ever since you introduced this annual release model, people are like absolutely losing their marbles going, you cannot expect me as a DBA to be upgrading all my databases every single year. And this is true. We're not. Just because we have an 18 and a 19 and a 20, and yes, there will be a 21 and a 22, we will not be asking you to upgrade every year. What we're trying to do is actually satisfy the needs of all customers. And there is in my view, there are two camps that customers sit in. Customer camp number one is this. I have a database. I store stuff in it. I read stuff from it. I have applications that run on it. I need to make sure this thing is really secure, which means I need patches, security patches in particular. But other than that, don't bug me. I don't need to upgrade it. I'm not using the latest and greatest technology. The Oracle database has been pretty damn good since probably Oracle 7. It's a fantastic product. So why do I need to upgrade all the time? I'd rather not. And this is the objective here. We can satisfy this need. If you're running on 11.2, you've been able to run on 11.2 now for just about a decade. What we're saying now is the database you want to jump to from 11.2 is not 12. It's not 12.2, it's not 18, it's 19. 19 is the one you would jump to. That's the one that has this huge long-term support. Internally, 19C is actually our last generation of the 12C architecture. So we had 12.1, 12.2, 12.2.02 was 18C, 12.2.03 is 19C. It's the last generation of 12. That's the one we're going to give the longest support to. So you can see there on the slide, I've said you get 4 years of Premier support, so up to 2023, and then extended support to 2026. Since 19C obviously came out in, guess what, 2019, that's about 8 years. And if it follows the 11.2 cycle, you might even be able to eke out maybe a couple more years after that. So this gives customers that are reticent of doing regular upgrades, that they're getting these, literally 10-year life cycles. Name me any other product that gives you 10 years on a particular version. Man, every time I log on, my Windows PC says, hey, guess what? You've got another upgrade. Don't log off. So we're conscious of the fact that customers do like that ability to be very, very stable and not have to upgrade unless they absolutely desperately need to. So I stress again, if you're on 11, 19C is the one you want to be jumping to. And in particular, if you stay on 11, once it drops out of all these extended supports, it's going to run still fine, just fine. The biggest issue is security patches. And as I said at Open World at one of my talks, you could have a huge outage nowadays. You could lose all your hardware. You could lose all your networking. You could, delete all your databases. People will forgive you for that. People will forgive you for huge outages nowadays. I see outages on the news all the time about my airline went down. I couldn't book the other day. Didn't matter. I'm still going to use that airline. But if you get hacked, if you have a security breach on your database, that is going to kill you nowadays. That puts your companies out of business. So security patches are probably the most critical thing that you can have on an Oracle database. And that's why it's important that if you're on 11, you get onto 19, because that's where the security patches are going to keep coming out. They're going to dry up on those older releases. Cannot stress it enough. We'll talk more about security later on today. So back to this slide again, you can see 19C is the long-term release, and it's going to be supported longer than 20. That's the thing I want to stress here, longer than 20. 20 will come out and it will come and go, and 19C will still have a longer release cycle. So I want to stress that. 20C, I would imagine, will come out, hopefully early 2020. Please don't quote me on that. I have no privy to that, but I would imagine it'll come out sooner rather than later. We'll talk about 20C later on. One of the nice things that's come out is because we realize that 19C is this target version, which so many customers are going to be wanting to move to. We are giving you direct upgrade path from all the currently supported versions straight into 19C. One of the cool things about Oracle Open World was probably the most popular talks that were, in terms of attendance, were almost all the upgrade style talks. So obviously it's a hot topic, and Mike Dietrich and Roy Swanger did a fantastic job at Open World talking about these things, and I'm sure they'll be on office hours in the near future continuing the same story. But yeah, so if you're on 11.204, 12.102, 12.2 and 18, they all have a direct upgrade path to 19C. And if you haven't seen it, the way we do upgrades now is dramatically simplified. We now have this thing called auto upgrade, which really is trying to automate and simplify the vast majority of manual things we used to do. You used to get the upgrade manual out and it would have, chapters 1 to 5, this is your prereq number 1, prereq number 2, and all this list. And it was a great document. You'd go through it top to bottom and then you'd finally upgrade. The auto upgrade facility is trying to simplify a lot of that part of that task to doing all that for you. And at the end of it, sort of giving you a nice, concise, here's where we're at. What do you want to do? We're good to upgrade. Let's go. So auto upgrade, search for that. Go to Mike Dietrich's web pages for information on that. But auto upgrade is going to let you upgrade from all of these older releases straight into 19C for that long-term support. So hopefully I'm helping convince you that if you are a DBA that is in one of those environments where you don't want to upgrade often, you're catered for. Any version currently to 19C, and then you can sit there for nearly a decade. That's pretty cool. There are other types of customers that they are looking for particular feature sets. A feature comes out in version X of the database, and that's the one that they need because that's going to give them a competitive advantage in some way. It meets some particular need that they're really, really striving for. And for those people, that's why we went to annual releases, because it gives a smaller feature set per release. We can much more rapidly deliver stuff. So yes, they could be on 11 now, but they can go to 12, 18, 19. If there's a feature in 20, they can jump to that, 21, etc. As you can see there from the slide, our estimated kind of mix and match here, using sort of a TikTok kind of mechanism, is about every 3 releases will be these big long-term releases, 19, 22, 25, etc. We obviously reserve the right to change that, but that's roughly where our line of thinking is. So those people who are looking for really, really cool features that are going to really transform their business in 20 or 21 will have the opportunity to leap to those new feature sets. Those people who are, as I said, the more stability-based ones, fine, they can stay on 19 and jump to 22 in the same way they'll jump from 11 to 19. But we're offering mix and match. Now, I said customer types. I'll be a bit more granular just to help hopefully explain this better. It doesn't have to be a customer type. It can actually be a database type. And I'll give you a real example. I worked at a customer not too long ago where their data warehouse went through this upgrade cycle. They were on 11. We went to 12.1. And in particular, the reason we went to 12.1 is because we wanted to get access to some of the online operations for moving large amounts of data around because it was a data warehouse. Then to 12.102 because that gave us in-memory option, which is something that was very keen. And then to 12.2, and all those things, one of the big drivers was the pattern matching SQL clause. This was a data warehouse. This was an organization that needed to do fraud analysis for customer transactions. And the pattern matching clause, that SQL statement that came in 12, was literally the greatest driver for them to upgrade. that was the real trigger point. They said, yep, we're out of 11, we're going on to 12, and they've rolled through the 12 cycle. So for one particular database in their organization, they're the second kind of customer. Aggressive upgrade cycles because they want to aggressively get new features because they've been waiting on them. But in the same customer side, one of their other databases, one of their transactional databases, is a fairly, I hate to use the term unsophisticated, let's call it simple application of, it's very strongly just transactionally based. Just lots and lots of transactions. I got something popping here on the chat. I'll come back to your question in a second, Srikanth, and I'll just finish this slide off. So yeah, they're on 11.2. Then they went to 12.1 because they didn't want to pay for external support in 11.204. They went to 12.1, but they haven't gone to 12.2 and they haven't gone to 18 because the features available, the vast majority of features in those two releases, aren't particularly applicable to them. Anyone that's been to my new features talks knows there's a bundle of goodies in 12.2 and 18, but they weren't pertaining to this particular database for this particular customer. So they are still currently on 12.1 and they're planning on moving to 19C in the new year. So inside one particular database customer, you can actually have these mix and match variations. I think it's good that we have the best of both worlds. A question that came on the chat saying, our database 11GR2 is on AWS. How these cloud vendors take care of security issues on the database if extended support is closed? That is a question for AWS, but AWS is an Oracle customer like anyone else in the sense of they use Oracle technology, you bring your Oracle licenses to it. Now, obviously with AWS, you lose that opportunity in terms of what version you are necessarily on, in terms of what versions they offer. But rest assured, just like any vendor, you need to be on versions which are supported and versions for which security patches are available. If any vendor, whether it's AWS or even a customer, anyone, chooses to stay on versions of the database that are no longer supported and no longer get security patches, then yeah, you are opening yourself up to the potential of vulnerabilities. And that's certain, I don't know AWS particularly well, but one would imagine they currently already offer, I would hope, version 12 of the database. But if not, then one would imagine they're going to have to look at being able to offer customers 18 or 19 in the near future, because yeah, you're exactly right. If you're not getting security patches, then you're opening yourself up to a potential world of hurt. If I only had an Oracle cap here, I could put my Oracle cap on and say, this will never happen on Oracle Cloud. It'll be fantastic. But yeah, it's a simple fact of life is you need to stay at least relatively current in order to guarantee that security protection that comes with the versions of the database which are most current. The key thing I'm trying to, I suppose, suggest here is the fact that because we do have the annual release cycle and the extended support mechanism now, you get choice. And I hope you embrace that. You can choose on a database by database basis what style of upgrades you would like to do. And I'm pretty happy with that in terms of our offering from Oracle. Number 4, let's talk about Application Express. Now, Application Express has its own office hours, so I don't want to steal any of their thunder. But one of the things I wanted to bring to the attention of DBAs is one of the things that coming in the new releases of Application Express is a particular tool I think DBAs might find very, very useful, because one of the great things about Application Express is if you have a data source, it's so easy to provide a sort of a window or a query opportunity on top of it. I mean, ultimately, that's what AskTOM is, just simple windows of queries and data entry on top of existing tables. For DBAs, we have so many facilities where maybe existing tools fall short. We might have a query that wants to look at active session history. We might want to look at, DBA table space thresholds. All those database dictionary views are great, and a lot of the reporting we have on them might come from things like SQL Developer or Enterprise Manager. But what if we have some other things? What if we have some facilities that maybe don't meet exactly those tools? Application Express is a fantastic little tool for DBAs on that. If you want to have a tinker with Application Express as a DBA, just to see what's coming, there's this thing called the early adopter. 19.2 will be coming out soon for Application Express, but you can go to tryapexnow.com to actually try it. And I thought I'd give you a quick demo just to hopefully pique your interest as a DBA of the kind of things you might be able to get out of Application Express. So let's do a new share. And this is, you can see I've come into tryapexnow.com. It's just a version of Application Express running on a free site, similar to apex.oracle.com, but this is the next version coming out. And this is what I thought I'd show you. It's a very, very simple demo, but how cool 19.2 will be. So I'm going to create a new application. And this is obviously running from Perth to somewhere in the United States, so excuse the latency. So we do a new application. I'm going to call it Apex 19.2. In fact, I'll call it 19.2. I can't remember if I deleted my previous attempt at this. I'll add a page. And one of the new things is this thing called faceted search. And to help you explain what that is, let's actually do the demo. So I'll call it search. I'll pick a table. I'll use the sales table. This is just the SH schema populated. We'll add a page, and then we'll create our application. So it's going to run off and do some stuff now. But as you can see, I've done about 10 clicks so far. And just so because I'm so lazy, so I don't have to actually type in my username and password again, I'll create an authentication scheme, which is, let's flip through here, which is actually no authentication. There we go. So I can make that the current one. And then I can run my app. So let's run our application. So as you can see, I've taken 45 seconds to build an app on a table. But this is one of the cool things coming in 19.2 of Apex called faceted search. So here's my data from the sales table. What it's done is it's gone out, looked at the sales table, looked at the foreign key constraints, looked at the referential integrity constraints, looked at the relationships to other tables, and gone and found that and brought it back into here. This product is actually a product ID in the sales table. It's just a numeric key. But it's worked out this, I should probably be doing a join back to the product table to get the description. And then over here, it's done what we see on a lot of websites, which is in terms of gone and found the most frequently occurring products, the most frequently occurring channels, amounts sold, and come up with some very simple filtering operations. So I can filter by direct sales, or I can filter by direct sales and 5 megapixel telephoto cameras, etc. Or I can clear. All of this is what we call faceted search. We've got the number of records put out there. We've got the number, etc. So we've got numbers. It's come up with intelligent numbers here based on the amount. It's done an awesome amount of stuff in terms of giving us filtering, giving us intelligent data. It didn't just give us the product ID and the channel ID, which are just surrogate keys. It's gone and done the joins, etc. All with just clicking on a table. So this is a real headline feature coming up in 19.2. There's an Apex office hours coming up, I think, maybe in a couple of hours tonight. So hopefully this excites you about Apex 9.2, the fact that as a DBA in particular, I can go click, 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 and I've got a fantastic drill down view into common data sources. Could be the data dictionary, could be application tables, could be any kind of thing related to application that is metadata. We often as DBAs get requests to update metadata for applications. Apex could be a perfect tool for that. So that's pretty cool. So that's what's coming in Apex 19.2, and hopefully that gets you excited about Apex. Number 5, Exadata. There were a lot of Exadata announcements at Oracle Open World, and I'd imagine some of the DBAs in the call are happily running Exadatas at the moment. And if you look at the current bleeding edge, the top of the range Exadata, X8-8, as you can see, it's got 576 cores, 18 terabytes of RAM, nearly a petabyte of flash, 2.5 petabytes of disk, 40 gigabit per second InfiniBand. And like me, I'd imagine as you see that, you're probably thinking, that's just not enough. We need more. So yeah, so as insanely specced out as Exadatas are, there's always those customers that say, there's new technology out there, there's new hardware. Can we do better? And we can. We have this thing now called the Exadata X8-8, and it's got some new goodies in it over and above what you can get on an Exadata X8. The first one is remote direct memory access over Converged Ethernet, Rocky, as they call it. and persistent memory. So what's rocky? Ethernet is one of those things that used to be, you know, some terrible piece of blue cable that you plugged into your PC, and if you were lucky, you got 100 megabit per second. But it's funny how all the technologies which were seen as superior to Ethernet, fiber channel, InfiniBand, whatever, which are awesome pieces of technology in their own right, have all been surpassed now as Ethernet just continues to explode. You know, originally we went to gigabit Ethernet, then 10 gig, then 40, and then they started doing bonding of all that. But now we've got 100 gig Ethernet. It's just ridiculous what Ethernet will do nowadays. And so we've recognized that, and now you can get 100 gig Ethernet into the backplane of an Exadata system. The switch that comes with the new Exadata X8-8 also has 100 gig going out to the outside world, but based on what I heard at Open World, that is not yet officially certified. So when this product comes out, it is available to, I'm not sure, I think there's still a decision-making process as to whether you'll be able to run 100 gig into the box in your data center, or whether it'll still be 10 or 40 coming out. Unsure yet, so don't assume that as gospel, but inside the box, yeah, we're running 100 gig Ethernet, which is pretty cool. And obviously one of the nice things there is you obviously generally had to pay Exadatas for dedicated InfiniBand switches. You can now pretty much run Ethernet switches throughout the entire gear. Users' latest KVM versus virtualization. Yes, one of the things that's coming is we're moving away from Xen into KVM. Tune into the Exadata office hours for more details on that. I'm pretty sure in the interim, both will be happily supported. And as it says here, you can choose to either go the Ethernet, Exadata, or the InfiniBand one, depending on what you've currently got in your data center. The second one is persistent memory. It's funny how, like, you know, at the talk overall, someone kept saying persistent memory system, and then obviously didn't want to use the term PMS as an acronym. So PMEM seems to be the thing that people are talking about, persistent memory accelerator, but they're using the term PMEM. And you may have heard in the press over the last year or so the concept of what we call Optane memory from Intel. You know, I like to think of it as it's half RAM, half flash, somewhere in between. It's like super fast. You call it as fast as memory, but persistent, or as, you know, it's disk that is as fast as RAM. It's sort of this hybrid in between. And as you can see from the diagram, we're going to start taking advantage of that. The compute server will be able to access Optane memory in the storage server as if it was just RAM, in effect. And it's going to be persistent, which is pretty cool. So as you can see that from the slide, we're claiming you'll be at 19 microsecond IO latency. Isn't it funny how it used to be always, you know, if you can get millisecond latency, that was ridiculous. Yeah, millisecond is obviously so last year. Now it's all about microsecond latency. So yeah, so we're adding effectively Optane memory into the box and just effectively increasing the number of tiers you have in terms of storage. You've obviously got RAM, fast as possible, Optane, almost as quick, and then flash, and then real disk. So the number of tiers goes up by 1 to take advantage of the advances in hardware. Multi-tenant. I've got to keep an eye on the time. Oh, we're struggling. But let's talk about multi-tenant. This is the important thing. This is huge. If you're a DBA, listen in for the next few slides. This one's critical. Since Oracle 12 was first released, we hinted at the fact that multi-tenant might one day become the only architecture that we have. Currently in all versions of Oracle from 12 onwards, you can have a non-pluggable database, or you can have a container database which consists of pluggables. Here's the deal. We weren't lying. We weren't mucking around. We weren't just trying to scare you. 20C will not support anything except the container and pluggable database architecture. That's the line. So 19C will support non-pluggable. And as you said, you can have that for a decade just about. But once you go to 20, that's it. It must be a pluggable database. Critical thing. Now I can hear you all screaming down the line. Not as, oh, you seem to be taking this remarkably well, which is nice. But yeah, people are saying, you know, well, I haven't moved, and you know, what's this mean? You know, will my applications break, etc. E-Business Suite, which is probably the most complicated database application on the planet, We'll obviously move to 20 in due course. And yes, it will also support the pluggable database architecture. That's perhaps been the sticking point in terms of being able to support pluggable across the board. If you haven't moved to pluggable, you want to start looking at it. It's really not such a big deal, and it's obviously a well-worn technology now. I think this is a good thing because currently we obviously have two code bases inside Oracle. We have a whole stack of code inside the kernel which manages non-pluggable, and a whole stack of code inside the kernel that manages pluggable. That is two separate code bases. That's more complexity. That's chance for bugs. That's more chance for errors. The sooner we can get to a single code base, the better, I think, for Oracle, for all customers. It's basically a tighter piece of code. That's one of the reasons you may have seen that on a much more smaller scale. You notice that we have DBMS job and DBMS scheduler, and we've always said we're moving away from DBMS job. In 18C, in fact, in 19C, sorry, we've left the DBMS job APIs there, but they actually are now just hooks into the DBMS scheduler code. We've managed to shrink the code base now to give a better and more robust product. This is the same thing on a much broader scale. Only one code base is good for customers because it's less complexity. Now, that may not be enough to sell you, so to speak, on moving to pluggable, or you might be thinking, well, I'm never going to go to Oracle 20C if I have to move to pluggable database. Let's add in a sweetener. As you know, in all versions of Oracle now, if you're using multi-tenant, you get one pluggable pretty much. There's variations, but you get one pluggable, and that's if you want more, and hence all the fantastic goodies that come with pluggables in terms of cloning, etc., you have to license it. Not anymore. This is huge. From 19C onwards, in all editions of Oracle, Express Edition, Standard Edition, Enterprise Edition, Cloud, on-premise, you name it, you get 3 pluggables without paying a multi-tenant license. Stress that again, 3 pluggables without an additional license. Once you go to 4, yes, if you're a person that's using 4, 10, 50 pluggables, then yes, you have to pay a multi-tenant license. But now you get 3. And I think that's awesome because the reality is once you're allowed more than 1, enormous opportunities open up for you. Here's a classic example. I could have 3 pluggables on production. There's no extra license fee for that. I could now start taking those pluggables and cloning them to my dev environment. Or I could take pluggables in my dev environment and clone them to multiple pluggables in my same dev environment. Once I can start having clones without paying a license, the facilities become boundless because I can clone dev, take that clone and unplug it. So I can keep my dev central, for example, repository at 3 pluggables, unplug it, give it to developers running, say, Express Edition on their own machine because Express Edition is free. So now every developer can have Express Edition running on their machine, and they can have the 3 pluggables in that as well because it's all editions. Unplug dev from central, give it to a developer, let them create their own pluggables for unit testing. The concept of pluggables being not having an extra license with things like flashback technology is a perfect fit for the modern development paradigms, which are build something, deploy something, build, test against it, throw it away. So as a developer, I can get a development database from my, say, central repository, plug it into Express Edition, clone it, run a unit test, play with it, blow it away. Clone the fresh copy or the original copy, bang it into another unit test, do some testing, integration testing, throw it away. All of which for no license fee. This is huge. I'm super pumped about this. So multi-tenant from 19C onwards, 3 pluggables, nothing more to pay than your Enterprise Edition fee. Super cool. Let's move on to Oracle 20C, which of course does not yet exist, hence the safe harbor statement. What are some of the key 20C items coming up? Auto machine learning, native blockchain tables, in-memory vector joins, JSON speed, persistent memory store. Let's fly through some of these and more. In-database machine learning. Machine learning is something that we've had on our cloud for a long time, and a lot of other software platforms, Oracle Analytics, etc., all have machine learning facilities, etc. But that generally has meant in the past, you've got all this fantastic data in the database, you drag it out and put it somewhere so you can run machine learning against it. That takes time. It'd be better if we can leave it right where it is, and that's what we've got, auto database machine learning. So we can run those machine learning algorithms inside the database, which is pretty cool. The second part of machine learning is what we call auto machine learning. It is Oracle machine learning for Python. If you've ever been to any of the machine learning talks that are floating around, Heli does a great one, Heli from Finland, search for her, or Sandesh Rao, who's an Oracle person. One of the things you see in machine learning is there's a bazillion algorithms out there and a bazillion techniques. And for certain kinds of data, you should use this technique. For other kinds of data, you should use that technique. But that's all well and good if you know what the data is. But if you're running exploratory stuff, what do? We're trying to simplify that process with this thing called auto machine learning. We'll look at the data and try to come up with the best model based on the data, rather than you having to know in advance what kind of machine learning algorithm or fit to do. We'll actually do that for you. We'll actually examine the data and come up with the best machine learning. And that way, once again, machine learning becomes closer to that utopian goal of the black box. There's my data. You go work out how to best deal with it, and then give me the results and the patterns and the predictions that I want. So we're trying to simplify machine learning in 20C such that it literally is a black box exercise for you. That's pretty cool. Native blockchain tables. No, this is not about doing cryptocurrency mining in the Oracle database. This is a really cool thing in terms of if you want to have blockchain in what I would call, this is the wrong term, in what I call its simplest form, i.e. some mechanism of guaranteeing a trust relationship in data. We have this thing called a blockchain table. And what it is it's a table that every time you add a row, we follow that blockchain algorithm, that blockchain philosophy of each row is logically bound to its previous version, its previous successor, via a crypto hash, such that you can't manipulate that data. So what happens is this is a table that you create it, and you've got to be careful once you create it. By default, you can't drop it because, let's face it, this is meant to be a cast iron record of transactions. You can't update the existing rows because that's not how blockchain works. You can only add a new row, and that new row will have the hash for a hash representing that row and all previous versions of the row, just like a blockchain does. So it's a mechanism of storing in the database a table with data, but plus the blockchain addenda, the blockchain information that makes sure these rows can never be manipulated, never be modified, and they represent an true and accurate record of the history of that data. So it's blockchain in a relational table, for lack of a better term. That's pretty cool because once it's still a relational table, it's the kind of things you can do with all other relational tables. You can query, you can do joins to other tables. It becomes part of your standard application enterprise. But with that extra protection of knowing that not even a DBA can manipulate those rows or mess with that data without violating the rules of blockchain. So that's pretty cool. JSON speed. You may remember in Oracle 11, we used to have XML type, a dedicated data type for XML to offer greater flexibility than just say a large club. We didn't do it in Oracle 12 with JSON. We just introduced blobs and clobs, but we've revisited that decision given the ever increasing demands on the functionality and flexibility of JSON. We've introduced in Oracle 20 a new JSON data type. It's a binary data type. So it's not like just a clob, it's actually a binary data type, which actually offers greater performance and more flexibility. We'll be able to do more things directly using JSON transform as the example there, using this binary data type. So we sort of recognize the fact that JSON looks like it's here to stay. And so we're actually increasing the functionality portfolio in Oracle 20. In-memory is getting a swag of stuff. And I think it's just a recognition of the fact that with the amount of incredible stuff that's coming in hardware, Optane, etc., and the ridiculous sums of RAM that machines can have nowadays, then our software has to keep pace with that. So we've got things like spatial and Oracle text now that can sit in memory store, not just relational data. We've always had the SIMD vector optimizations for filtering in in-memory, but now we can actually do joins using hardware instruction sets as well, which just adds performance. I like this third one, which is the in-memory plus buffer cache store. What we used to have was you query a table, and if it's in memory, we could get it from there. If it's 3/4 in memory, then the remaining quarter would come from disk. What we can do now is, if it happens to have some of the data in the buffer cache, we can actually get as much as we can from in memory. And if fragments of it are in the buffer cache, we can get it from there before having to divert to disk as well. So once again, hopefully getting more performance benefits. And the last one is, what's our keyword? Autonomous. Everyone loves autonomous. Is moving in memory to being along those lines as well. Having algorithms inside the database that will be able to tell us these are the objects that are best suited to being in memory, and therefore bring them in automatically, but also not just bring them in, which is sort of our limitation on the current technology, but also the algorithms being going, that's in memory, but we no longer need it. There are better candidates, and therefore we can actually start to swap things out of in memory as well. So once again, trying to make the operation of getting the absolute best out of in-memory, and hence your in-memory license, as automated as possible. Once again, heading toward autonomy. You can see how that's a natural fit for our cloud offerings. Persistent memory store, as I mentioned before, is things like Optane memory being available in the database. Now, a couple of bullet points there where I've got the last two: requires data guard and sharding for scale out. That's actually a recognition of it. In 20C, using persistent memory will not be rack supported because, as you know, the rack has two nodes and they share information via cache fusion, and they actually are having a logical SGA, a single logical SGA. PMEM or Optane memory, etc., sits outside the SGA. It's effectively more closer to being something like disk. So in terms of rack support for that, that's going to take a little bit longer for us to nut out, because in theory, disk is obviously meant to be logically separate in that sense compared to cache fusion. Obviously, it's a shared disk subsystem, but PMEM isn't. PMEM sits in each individual server. So it's a bit of a hybrid. It's not really SGA, which is one logical SGA, and it's not shared disk because it's separate to each server. We don't have rack support yet for PMEM. So if you want to use PMEM in a HA style of thing, you would need to use data guard for failover. And if you wanted to scale out, it's funny how when you look at those Exadatas, I cannot imagine why you'd ever need to scale out anymore. But if you did need to scale out, then you would use sharding to do so. No rack support yet for PMEM. There will be a new autonomous database coming with 20C. We have autonomous data warehouse, autonomous transaction processing. We'll have a thing called an autonomous JSON database, where all it does is support JSON documents, literally a document data store, key lookups, etc. Now you're probably thinking, but the other two databases support that anyway. They support a whole lot more, but you could easily just have a table of JSON documents with a primary key. What's the big deal? Why have this third one? Well, there's a reason for that. It'll be a simpler, cut down version. It just does JSON. It'll support things like SOTA access and REST access. So it'll be a much cheaper offering. So once again, catering to what particular customer needs are. How are we going for time? Well, we're getting 5 minutes left. We might get through this. Some SQL goodies coming in 20C is a thing called a SQL macro, and probably best just to show you with some examples on this one. Let's say I wanted to write a function which was trimming or clipping a value. So if I have a value here and I need it between these two values, like if I got 10 and 20, the value of 15 returns 15. The value of 5 returns 10. It's capped at the lower bound and capped at the upper bound. Now I could write that in Oracle just using this, least greatest. But what if I have a function called clip? Now I could do it just in normal PL SQL. And it would just be, write my own function called clip in PL SQL, which is sort of what I've done here. But notice it is actually returning a string. It's actually returning the string least greatest low. And it's a new type called a SQL macro. What happens is when you run it, it runs like normal SQL. Once you've defined that function, you can simply run it, and you can see what clipped does. It simply says, salary can't be less than 1,000, so 800 gets moved up to 1,000. It can't be more than 2,000, so it gets rounded down to 2,000 here, but everything else passes through. But it's not a PL SQL function. what it actually is a text substitution. If we fly back a bit, if the definition is this, that the function clip returns this string, but it's a SQL macro, when you reference it, clip here, it actually replaces it here. So it's not actually doing any context switching between PL/SQL and SQL Engine. It is actually replacing that text clip with the text from its function. It's actually like a substitution variable that you'd see in things like SQL+. It's actually substituting the SQL statement. For things like cross-database migration, that'll be awesome. For example, if I'm moving from, say, Postgres to Oracle, Postgres has a function called strpos. It's pretty much identical to the Oracle in-string function, just a cut-down version of the in-string function. Well, I can actually implement my function called strpos. It returns the string, in-strings str substring, and then I can use it. So for cross-database migration, I've got this lovely text substitution as a SQL macro. There's also a thing called a table type macro, which is still messing with my head. What we've got here is a function called budget. It returns a SQL macro of type table. So I've still got, once again, just text here, but now I can take parameters. So this parameter department number becomes a bind variable into this petite of SQL text. Once I've defined that, I could do something like this. With the table definition of East Coast, which is a set of department numbers, I can do select star from budget, which happens to be this function, which is actually this piece of SQL text, and pass in the department numbers coming from this table. Why is this cool? This is obviously the implementation of a parameterized view. That's pretty cool. You now have parameterized views in Oracle 20C by using these SQL macro tables. SQL macro tables can even redefine the actual content of a query. So you could conceivably do something like this: select star from NJ and pass in 3 tables. NJ would be a SQL type macro function, which would then remap this to being the following. NJ stands for natural join. So these are actually what we call polymorphic SQL macro table functions, which will let you actually have a function which actually rewrites the SQL under the covers. As DBAs on the call, you're probably screaming from the room in fear now, and I might share that sentiment. This looks something that could be a worry in terms of actually trying to diagnose and performance tune and actually track this stuff down. But I'm just letting you know, as DBAs, you need to know this stuff is coming. SQL macros in 20C. Our last topic is free stuff. Let's talk about free stuff. The first one, what are some of the database security issues we often encounter? And this is a slide I took from one of the security talks. These sort of 10 things. And in the past, this is generally solved by our autonomous offerings. One of the things of the autonomous database is to absolve the responsibility to our best degree of handling security issues, because as a DBA, having a security breach is a very career limiting move. So we always force encryption, we always do security patching, we control administrator access, etc. So all this stuff is cool for us as DBAs. It's now someone else's problem, and that is the autonomous database's problem. But this is still our problem. You know, making sure that we don't have drifts in our security configuration, make sure we don't have privileged users who haven't been detected, auditing sensitive data, etc. This is our problem and still is. But coming very soon is a new product called Oracle DataSafe. And DataSafe comes with any of our cloud databases for free. It's not a product you have to buy. It just comes there by default. It's a complete sort of console of security facilities available to you for any of your cloud databases. All you do is, if you've got an existing autonomous database, you simply pick the database and then say, yep, I want it to be DataSafe enabled. It's just a button you click, and effectively you've then registered it with the DataSafe. Once you've done that, you can literally do an assessment in this console that's now available on your cloud, and you get this comprehensive report. If you've ever used DBSAT, our security analysis tool, that's one of the components of DataSafe, a facility which lets you now do incredibly much more powerful security audits and checks and measures on your databases, and it costs you nothing. Just another freebie, that's good. But this is the big one. This is the big freebie. I know it's just on 9 o'clock, so bear with me, we're nearly done. This is the big free one, and hopefully you've already known this, but if not, this was the reason you should have gone to Open World. This is a Oracle free database on the cloud, not a trial, not a you get it for 30 days, not a if you use too much, you get charged. This is a straight up, here is an offering for you that is free, and as long as you use it, it will be free forever. That is just insane. And what do you get? Lots. Now, yes, it's just like Oracle Express Edition. We have caps in terms of what you get, but you get 2 databases, each at 20 gig. You get 2 VMs. You get 100 gigs plus of storage, of block storage, plus a load balancing network. All of this you can get, you sign up for it, you simply provide your email address, and it's free forever. As long as you keep using it, it'll be free. Think of what you could build on this for no cost. And it's our autonomous database. It's not like some cheap, crappy piece of junk that we got hung around the corner. This is all running on Exadata, all running on autonomous, security patched, etc. You know, all the cool things autonomous are there for you. Now, let's do one last demo. So this is, I signed up for my autonomous database. I've got my, my free tier. So I've got my little free tier here, and I've set up a VM, which is the VM. So all I'm going to do is, this is Swing Bench, Dominic Giles's benchmarking utility to slam transactions, order entry style transactions at a database. So I got my free tier here. None of this costs me a cent. And let's see what we can do. We'll let it ramp up. It's going to connect. I'm only using 6 concurrent users, and we'll see how many transactions per second we can do. And as you can see pretty quickly, we've settled into about between 300 and 400 transactions per second. So you can run an application that does 400 transactions per second, which is what? That's 6, 7, 8,000 transactions per minute on a system running the autonomous database 100% free. It costs you nothing. It just blows my mind. Now, if I go back to the previous slide, you got this, well, what's this 30-day free trial? When you sign up to the free autonomous database, you get all of this stuff for free forever. The trial lets you use all the other stuff as well in the Oracle Cloud on a 30-day trial basis. But when that trial basis expires of all the other stuff, don't get me wrong, this stuff here, your databases, your compute nodes, your storage, your load balancing is free and free forever. That is awesome. If you want to take advantage of this, this is awesome. A friend of mine, Dimitri, ran this fantastic series of blog posts, literally one blog post at a time. How do you sign up? How do you connect to your cloud? How do you create your database? How do you create your first VM? Literally walks you through every single step. It's like a tutorial from go to woe, and literally at the end of it, you'll have databases, web server, Apex running, the whole kabang, and it's all free and free forever. Just super cool. Blows my mind. My last final thing is, if you didn't get to go to Open World and you want to download all the presentations, I've created a blog post which shows you how to do it. So if you go to that blog post, it's bit.ly OW19 mega. It's got a link there which lets you run a download script which will download every single presentation from Open World. Just to give you an example, let me do one last share. Just that one. So you can see I've gone to the effort. You can see all the sessions will be downloaded. The file names are session name followed by the speaker followed by the actual subject. So yeah, a very easy script there you can use just to download all the Open World content, because I had the good fortune of going to Open World, but even if you didn't, or even if you did, there's no way you saw every single session. So this is a great way of catching up on all the content as well. It's 9:05. Apologies for running over time, but we are done. Hopefully that has brought you up to speed roughly with the database and DBA stuff that happened at Open World over the last week. I had a wonderful time there. Thank you very much for your attendance. Obviously I've used up the whole hour, but if you have questions about anything you've seen tonight and stuff you've seen at Open World, please reach out to me on Twitter. But in the meantime, please go to that site, that link, and download all the Open World content, and please go through it, because as DBAs, our job is to consistently be up to speed with all the cool things and cool tech that's coming. But for me, Once again, free database, blows my mind. Multi-tenant pluggables, no license fee, blows my mind. So as DBAs, it's been a fantastic week for us. That's it for me. Sorry for running over time. But yeah, thanks for this DBA Office Hours, and we'll see you next month on Office Hours as well. Until then, bye for now. Time for me to have a coffee. See you later, everybody.